Chapter 37. The next morning, Dafu shook Minli awake. "Wake up, sleepy," Dafu said, pulling her up. "Come on, we want to show you something." "Yes," Afu said, "hurry." Minli followed them out of the house and through the streets. It was almost as if there were a parade, for all the family were coming out of their houses and following. Minli hadn't realized Dafu's family was so large. There were aunts, uncles, cousins. The home behind the red gate doors was really a village of relatives. As Minli ran around through the open doors, she stopped and grinned, because there, waiting out on the stone ground, was Dragon. He was strong and smiling, sitting straight and alert. There was no daze in his eyes and no foul blackness on his body. In fact, except for 4 pale raised scars on his arm, he looked exactly as he did before they met the green tiger. "You're okay," Minli said as she hugged him. "Of course," Dragon said to her, grinning with happiness. "I told you that dragons heal quickly." "Yes, they do," a gong said from beside her. After the poison left him, his wounds healed almost immediately. Minli was so happy to see the dragon that she didn't notice that most of Daafu's family were surrounding them in awe. "A dragon," she heard one small boy whisper, "a real one." "We told you so," Daafu murmured to their cousin. "See." "Unfortunately, friend dragon," a gong said loudly so that all could hear, "you are too large for us to show you proper hospitality inside our home." "That's okay. We should leave soon anyway," Minli said, and turned to Daafu. "If you will show us the way to Never-Ending Mountain." "Of course," they grinned, and Amma said, "Yes, you should leave as soon as you can. The sooner you leave, the sooner you can return to your parents. That would be for the best." Agong nodded when he heard Amma's words. "Breakfast then," he said. "Then we will see our new friends off." So even though the rocky land was cold and windy, the family brought out their breakfast of warm rice porridge out to eat. No one wanted to miss a moment of looking at a real dragon. Amma led a large iron pot rolled in on a rough wood platform by 2 of Daafu's uncles in front of the dragon. The pot was steaming and full, and Minli recognized it as the medicine tea. An aunt carried cups of the tea on 2 trays balanced on her shoulders with a stick for anyone to take. Minli carefully reached for a cup. The fragrant aroma was too tempting to let pass. "We should not call this drink medicine," an uncle said. "It is too delicious now that there is no more green tiger. There is nothing for it to cure." "Maybe we should call it well tea," Afu laughed, "since the green tiger is down in the well." "No," Agong said. "We want to remember our friends, not our enemies." "Then we should call it Dragon Well Tea," Dafu said, "because it made the dragon well." The family all cheered at that, and there was a look of softness in Dragon's eyes that Minli had never seen before. He was unused to kindness, she realized. He had spent most of his years alone, trapped by his flightless body. Too soon, breakfast was over, and Minli was packing her possessions into the yellow silk bag the king had given her, while Amma tied supplies onto the backs of Afu and Dafu. "Just in case," she said, slipping in their simple food of rice wrapped in leaves and salted boiled eggs. "Bring Minli to Never-Ending Mountain and then comes right home." Agong put his hands on Minli's shoulders and said, "You're a brave girl, Minli, quick and clever, but you have been away from home too long. Go as quickly as you can." Amma wrapped her warm arms around Minli, then brought out a warm jacket. "For you," she said. "We made it while you were sleeping. Your dress is too thin for the mountain." The jacket was multicolored, made of large patches sewn together, some dark blue, some deep purple, a few bright red. Minli smiled thankfully. Already the cold wind was chilling her, but she was hesitant to ask these people for anything else since they had already given her so much. As she put it on, she marveled at its warmth. The fabric looked like plain cotton, but she felt as warm as if she had put on a thick fur. "Let's go then," Dafu said, and the boy swung his arm up in excitement. It was only then that Minli noticed a large gash missing from his sleeve. She looked at the sleeve of her new coat and the bright red patch that made it, and she gasped. Goodbye, Dafu's family waved. As they waved, Minlie saw that each of them had missing material in their sleeves. Her goodbyes froze in her throat as she realized her warm coat was made of pieces cut from the family's own clothing. Come on, Afu said, her white hand slipping from her notched sleeve to pull at Minlie. Hurry up. Yes, Dragon said. We should go so the twins can return to their village as soon as possible. Minlie nodded, and as she waved a grateful goodbye to the village, a sea of ruined sleeves fluttered back at her. Chapter 38. As Minlie and the dragon followed Dafu up the harsh landscape, the wind blew wildly. But traveling was not difficult. Dragon carried them over any large cracks or openings. Minnie had forgotten how enjoyable it was to travel with him. And Dafu, laughing with pure delight as they rode Dragon, looked like two ripe hawthorn berries. Their merriment and the brilliant red color of their clothes and of Dragon himself seemed to warm the cold landscape. It was only when Minlie's hands poked out of her sleeves into the icy air that she realized how cold it really was. It's not much further, Afu said to them after they had walked some distance. We should be able to see Never-Ending Mountain soon. You've never seen the Old Man of the Moon, though? Minlie asked. Has anyone? Dafu shook their heads. No one has ever seen him, Dafu said. No one in the history of our family or village. Though we do know he is someone who moved our ancestors here, Afu said. The Old Man of the Moon brought your ancestors here? Minlie asked. How? The story of Dafu's ancestors. Even though our ancestors did their best to please the magistrate, they were not able to make him happy. One day, a neighbor rushed to our ancestors' home, his horse panting from running. I have just returned from the city, the neighbor gasped. I rushed all the way here to warn you. The magistrate is convinced the answer you sent him was a trick, and you are keeping the real secret from him. He is coming here to punish you. He plans to destroy your home and family. Run away while you can. There is not much time. His soldiers will be here tomorrow. Our ancestors cried in fear. The large family, the many sons and daughters, aunts and uncles and children and grandchildren could not help being scared. But Yeye, the great-grandfather and head of the family, raised his hand for attention. It looks as if misfortune is coming, he said, and there is nothing we can do. We will not run. The soldiers will easily find us, and the magistrate would be even more brutal. And I do not want to spend our last moments together in panicked flight. Yeye looked up at the bright blue sky and the sun shining on the mountain beyond their home. It was hard to imagine the trouble coming. Little ones, he said to the children, go fetch your favorite kites. Then Yeye turned to the adults. Sons and daughters, he said, prepare the finest picnic you can with enough food and tea for all. We will not waste this time we have together. We will spend it as we always have, in happiness. The family nodded at Yeye's wise words. Quickly they rushed to do as he asked. They brewed large pots of their best chrysanthemum tea and filled special baskets with golden cakes and custard tarts, boiled chickens, crispy pork, fluffy steamed buns, and tea-stained eggs. And their brilliant kites in the shapes of bugs and butterflies were dragged out of storage and into the sun. Yeye smiled at his family as they finished their tasks. He carried his favorite books of poetry, stories, and songs in a bag. Come, he said, let us climb the mountain. So together with the tree leaves waving farewell, the family made their way up the mountain. They climbed high so the kites could fly without the trees getting in the way. When there was nothing between them and the sky, they stopped. And they had a delightful time. The children laughed as their kites soared into the wind. The women smiled as they sipped the tea, and the men happily ate their delicious treats. Yeye recited poetry that made the women sigh, told stories that made the men gasp, and sang songs that made all the children join in. But all too soon, the day was ending. The moon was already rising in the sky when the children were told to wind the strings of their kites. "Why bring the kites down?" an older boy asked. "This will be the last time we'll be able to fly them, to be able to play with them." "Yes," a girl said. "Let them fly for as long as they can." So instead of bringing the kites in, they cut the strings. As the kites were freed, a strong gust of wind burst from the sky. One by one, the butterflies and dragons disappeared as if flying home to the moon. As the kites vanished from the sight, there was a sad sigh. No one spoke, but they all wished an escape from tomorrow's tragedy. Quietly, the family packed their belongings and began to climb down the mountain. They walked a long time, so long that the moon rose overhead and they began to shiver with cold. "Are we lost?" a child asked. "This does not look like the way home." "That's impossible," his mother told him. "How can we be lost? There is no other direction than down." "But the boy is right," Yeye said. "Look at the rock before us. We have climbed this mountain many times, yet I have never seen this rock or any rock of this type before." "And there are no trees," a young girl said. "Always there were trees below us. Now there is just more rock." "It's colder too," another said. "It is much too cold for an early autumn night." "What has happened?" a woman said. "I think," Yeye said slowly, "we are no longer on our mountain. Somehow we are on a different one." "How is that possible?" a man asked, "and why?" Before Yeye could open his mouth and to reply, one of the children shouted. "Home!" she cried. "Our home is right there." And it was their home. The dark red gate doors were wide open, allowing them to see light shining from the windows of their houses. Their chickens squawked a greeting, and their dogs jumped through the gate with cheerful barks. Our ancestors couldn't believe it. Dirty pots and pans that had been left in the morning were still in the wash basin. Mixed up shoes and hanging laundry were exactly where they were before. Even the book that Yeye had left open was on the same page. Yeye walked from room to room and house to house with the family following like a parade. Finally, he found a slip of bright silk stuck in the hinges of the gate doors. He turned around to look at the family crowding about him. "It is a miracle," he said to them. "We have been moved here, beyond the magistrate's reach. We are saved." The family cheered, but could not help asking, "How? Who did this?" Yeye looked at the empty land around him and the dark blue sky and the moon above, and then at the thin strip of silk in his hand. "This silk is from one of the children's kites. The kites brought up our wishes up to the old man of the moon, and he must have decided that our destinies lay here," Yeye said, and he motioned upward. "For there is only one other here with us tonight. It is only us and the moon." "And your family has been here ever since?" Dragon asked. Both children nodded. "For over 100 years, our family has lived on the mountain, and we keep growing. Sometimes we travel down the mountain. Sometimes people come to us. Anyone who visits is welcome to call our place home." "So," Millie began, but her words died away as Dafu pointed toward the horizon. Millie and Dragon followed his hand and finally saw what could only be Never-Ending Mountain, home of the old man of the moon. Chapter 39. The Never-Ending Mountain was enormous, so large it made Fruitless Mountain seem like a loose pebble. Millie could not see the tip of or the bottom of it, as it seemed to grow out of a gorge so deep that the base must have been at the foundation of the earth. Millie felt as if she were on the edge of the world as she stared across the great gulf separating them from Never-Ending Mountain. It stood before them like a piece of raw green stone, towering forever into the sky and disappearing into silver mist. "There it is," Dafu said. "Never-Ending Mountain." "I bet the old man of the moon does live up there," Afu said. The top of this mountain must reach the moon. How do we get up there? Millie asked. She was starting to feel dizzy from staring upward so long. The dragon looked chagrined. If I could fly, he said, I'd be able to get us up there to see the old man of the moon. If you could fly, Afu laughed, you would not need to see him. But, Millie said, it looks like flying is the only way up to see the old man of the moon. There's probably another way, Afu said. Yes, Dafu said, you probably just have to let the old man of the moon know you'd like to come up. How do we do that? Dragon asked. Send a message? Millie looked up at the sky as Dragon and Dafu continued to talk. Send a message, send a message. Dragon's words echoed in Millie's ears, and she felt as if she were searching for a match to light a lantern. The wind gusted at her, as if it were trying to tell her something. She watched Afu's braid fly in the air. As she pulled it down, the cut pieces of her sleeve flapped like the tail of a kite. I know, Millie said excitedly. We'll do it like your ancestors did. She quickly kneeled to the ground and reached in her traveling bag for the 2 borrowed lines. Dragon and the children looked at her curiously as she waved the sheet of paper and the string before them. We can fly a kite to the old man of the moon, Millie exclaimed. I'll make a kite of the 2 borrowed lines that's bound to get his attention. Dafu and the dragon grinned, and together they made the borrowed lines into a kite. They fastened the page from the Book of Fortune onto Millie's chopsticks and attached the end of the red cord to the kite. But as they tried to trim the thread, Afu thought it would look neater if the end didn't dangle. They discovered that the borrowed line could not be cut. It's a string of destiny, Dragon said as he tried again without success to cut the thread with his claw. Each of them in succession had tried to break it. Dafu even tried to snap it with his teeth. It is reasonable to think it is unbreakable. Well, we don't need to trim the string to make a kite, Millie said, but we can't cut the kite free to go to the moon. Just fly it till the string runs out, Dafu said, then let it go. Millie nodded. It made sense. As they gazed at the wound coil, she said, amused, it won't take too long for the string to run out anyway. There's not a lot here. I just hope there's enough for it to fly, Afu said. So with Dafu running, they began to fly the kite. As the kite rose higher and higher, Millie watched the coil of string in her hand. Is the string running out yet? They each asked over and over again. But Millie shook her head every time. The thread seemed to endlessly unwind. Even as the kite climbed upward, becoming the size of a name chop mark, the string continued. Slowly it disappeared from view, with the thread scratching the darkening sky with a faint red line. That is a magic string, Dafu said in an odd voice. Of course, the dragon said suddenly. It's the thread of destiny. If we are destined to see the old man of the moon, it will stretch to reach him. You may be destined to meet him then, Afu said, impressed. However, as she looked at the sky turning to night, she frowned. But we are not. Dafu, we should go back home. We have been gone too long. After the green tiger, we should try not to worry Ahmad and Agong so much. Don't you have anything you want to ask the old man of the moon? Millie asked. You could change your fortune too. No, Dafu said, laughing. Why would we want to change our fortune? The children ran down the mountain, their laughter melting into the air. Millie shook her head in confusion, but waved goodbye. As Millie watched them turn into figures of shadows, seeming to dance toward their home and village, she thought of her own Ma and Ba waiting for her in her home far away. As the sky deepened like brewing tea, Millie and the dragon looked in silence as the red line reaching to the heavens. But just as the moon rose into the darkness, Millie felt a sudden jerk on the string. It began to strain and bend. Something's happening, she cried out. Pull the kite in, Dragon said. Pull it, bring it back. Something has changed, Millie said as she strained and pulled. It's heavy now. The dragon reached above Millie's head and grabbed the cord. Together they pulled and dragged. As they strained, Millie wondered if they were bringing down the moon itself. but there seemed to be no end to the string. As they wound up the thread, it seemed to get thicker and thicker. And when the string became the width of Minley's little finger, a strange clattering, like a wooden wind chime, filled the air. "Something has happened to the string," the dragon gasped between heaves. And something strange had happened. The thread, which was really now more like a thick silk rope, seemed to have divided itself into a long, strange web, reinforced with bamboo stalks. As the endless U-shape came toward them, Minley gasped. "The string," Minley panted. "It's a bridge."